So we will begin officially now and start the recording. So this is Ivana Manthor Anderson welcoming you to the quarterly update for the Dual Language Immersion program with our webinar today, December 13th from 4 to 5 p.m. Our agenda for today includes the welcome and introduction, looking both at our DLI team and today's speakers, some talk about our conferences, spotlights on starting new dual language immersion, and as was mentioned in our poll before we started recording, many of you are here to collect information, and this will be a wonderful opportunity to do that. Some updates about what's happening with DLI around the state and the country, reminders and resources, and then your questions. So as I said, I am Ivana Manthor Anderson. I'm with ESL Title III here at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Online with us today, many of you just heard Anne-Marie Gunter's voice. I may pause to say Dr. Anne-Marie Gunter's voice, and congratulations to her on that. You can see a number of other team members that we have on our DLI team. We're very excited to have many of these people online with us today and to have representation from such a diverse group of sections and divisions here at DPI. I'm not sure if you can actually read the slides. Some of the typing's a little small, so I am going to take just a minute to share that we have Stephanie Cyrus, who is with AIG and Advanced Programs, Kelly Schultz, which is 6-8 English Language Arts, Bert Jenkins with Healthy Schools, Tom Doherty with Social Studies, Howard Ginsberg with K-12 STEM, Sherry Vanelson with Exceptional Children, Mia Johnson with K-3 Literacy, Corey Watkins with the Multi-Tiered System of Support, and Ellen Hart with the NC Virtual Public Schools. And we always like to share the team because we want to model what it is that we hope to see you doing within your own districts. So think about who is on your DLI team. We have 3 spotlight speakers today. First will be Dr. Timothy Sims, the Director of Federal Programs at Hickory Public Schools. He's also part of our EL support team here at NCDPI. Our second speaker is Carla Flores Ballesteros with the Allen J. Elementary. She is the Allen J. Elementary Principal in Guilford County Schools. And last but not least, Mara Kobe, the K-12 World Languages Specialist in CharlotteMecklenburg Schools. So we're very excited to hear from 3 different people coming from different districts, coming from different opportunities for starting or continuing their programs. And we look forward to hearing from them in just a few more minutes.
All right, so now that you've heard a little bit about us, we'd like to ask you, what are you hoping to get from today's webinar? Are you just wanting to get in contact with fellow DLI educators to share ideas? Do you want details about starting or building a DLI program? Do you want information about secondary DLI continuation programs? Do you want updates from across North Carolina and around the U.S. for DLI? Or is there something else? And you can type that in the questions box. Just like before, we'll go ahead and launch our question, and you can do the poll and let us know. We're getting faster at our polls. Let's take another 10 seconds, and then we'll close this one out and move ahead. All right, thank you for voting. Close our poll and share the results. Looks like a majority of you, 85%, are here to get updates from across North Carolina around the U.S. for DLI. And we'll have that information available throughout the webinar at different times as it's appropriate for our agenda. It also looks like a little over 1/3 of you are here for information about secondary DLI continuation. That's certainly become a very large question for everyone as our DLI programs have matured into the secondary level, as well as contacts with your fellow DLI educators. And also, about 30% of you are here to get details about starting or building a DLI program. And that is our spotlight feature today. As you saw, it's focused on starting a DLI program at different levels. I don't see anything in the questions box, so we'll go ahead and move forward. We're beginning with conference updates, and we are doing these in chronological order. So in mid-November, just before mid-November, I attended the NCSFL annual meeting. The NCSFL is the National Council of State Supervisors for Languages. That's folks in my positions at departments of education across the country. We have our annual meeting and professional development conference just prior to the actual convention. And so some of the things that I think would be of interest to everyone here in DLI education is the fact that we began our sessions with a K-20 articulation panel. And so this looked at language programs across the K-20 spectrum, so starting K-12 and particularly in elementary, the growth of DLI programs and how that's impacting secondary level programs, and ultimately will move on into higher education. We also discussed FLES, Foreign Language of the Elementary Schools, what that acronym stands for. FLES is language being taught to elementary students, but taught as a separate subject as opposed to DLI that's taught through content. We also talked about secondary level work, particularly the seals of biliteracy that are happening across the country. North Carolina, of course, has the Global Languages Endorsement. That's our seal of biliteracy, and it recognizes students' multiliteracies and multilingualism at graduation. And then we spoke a little bit about post-secondary placement of students when they go to higher education pursuits. In addition, during those meetings, we also had unconference sessions. So these are much more loosely structured sessions and discussions. And there was a session just on dual language immersion, particularly focusing on things like questions around K-12 DLI sequences and the professional development needed for DLI educators, both teachers and administrators. So that's what happened the first 3 days. And then the ACTFL convention, the American Council for the Teaching of Foreign Languages, happened. That's our national organization. Some things that are really important, I think, to DLI educators and just world language education in general are the AP World Languages session that's always done there. We get an update from a national perspective about the advanced placement courses and exams, as well as the resources available to all language teachers through College Board and AP. We also attended, as North Carolina, the DLI Research Alliance meeting. I was invited to attend for the state level, but there were several district coordinators, some of whom are on the line today, who attended that Research Alliance meeting that looks at DLI research happening across the country, both recently completed as well as ongoing. There's also an Immersion SIG or Special Interest Group at ACTFL that we are very much a part of from North Carolina. And we also attended a U.S. Seals of Biliteracy meeting. And so again, that's an important recognition that our students can earn when they graduate from high school. Here in North Carolina specifically, I wanted to share with you that we've had some vendor updates when it comes to earning our Seal of Biliteracy, the Global Languages Endorsement. Our students can earn that in the world language by choosing one of three options. One is completing a series of courses up to a certain proficiency level. Another is through the credit by demonstrated mastery process. And yet another is through an external exam that's proficiency based and on the approved list. So on those vendor updates, we have additional languages added so that we have age-appropriate proficiency-based exams, including more than 30 heritage languages that have been added through those external exams and representing languages we have here in North Carolina. So our students, regardless of the language they speak at home, could be recognized for that in their Seal of Biliteracy if they want. So we're getting closer and closer to having all of our languages represented that way. This was also a shot from ACTFL. Some of you may know that the Title III group here at DPI was able to offer sponsorships for educators to attend the ACTFL convention as well as other conferences around the country, and particularly for us if they have something to do with language programs from our standards. So that's all world languages. Of course, DLI is a part of that. For ACTFL, we had 26 educators who were able to attend this national conference, many of them for the first time because of these sponsorships. They came from 13 different districts, 5 of our charter schools, and the North Carolina Virtual Public School, or NCVPS. Here on the screen, you see some screenshots from the Twitter feed that we had going during that time. And you see folks, particularly our DLI educators, who were enjoying the conference and attending on those sponsorships.
All right, not seeing any comments or questions in the question box. We'll move on to La Cosecha. So you can see when we talk about chronological order that actually these two conferences or three conferences more or less took place at the same time. So sometimes we have the opportunity to attend both, but in this case we're dividing and conquering. So the La Cosecha conference was in Santa Fe, New Mexico from November 15th through the 17th. And actually on November 14th, our group of sponsored participants also attended the National Council of State Title III Directors the day before. And the National Council also, one of our topics deals with dual language immersion. So what you can see here in the pictures are some of our 17 sponsored educators from across North Carolina. We also had 2 NCDPI staff that were able to attend. A number of other people from North Carolina attended La Cosecha as well. And in the photos, in addition to seeing the smiles, hopefully you might see some famous people that you recognize, maybe a Jim Cummins or a Carol Salva. And on the very far right, you have a picture of Jose Viena. Jose Viena is formerly of NCDPI and is now the director of the Office of English Language Acquisition at the federal level. So we were very excited to have him at the National Council and then also as one of the opening speakers on the opening night at La Cosecha. So what a wonderful opportunity for not only these educators, but for me to have the opportunity to interact with these teachers, with these administrators. On the far left picture, you can see Amy Jablonski with MTSS talking to Emily Bivens from Chapel Hill, talking about MTSS and how it specifically can work with our dual language immersion programs. And so just some very exciting things happening, the opportunity to build that capacity for our educators at La Cosecha. There were a number of other exciting things that happened at La Cosecha, one of them being the release of the newest Thomas and Collier book entitled Transforming Secondary Education, Middle and High School Dual Language Programs. So how appropriate for this webinar to be able to announce the release of this as we too are talking about new and continuing programs. You may recognize Dr. Joan LaChance over on the left. She is actually the author of Chapter 15. And one thing we wanted to share is that Wayne and Ginger were not able to join us at La Cosecha this year. Their daughter Kathy is having some health issues, and so we just want to let you guys know that so that you can keep them in your thoughts. Another thing that was released at La Cosecha is the National Dual Language Education Teacher Preparation Standards. That's a mouthful. So this is a collaborative project with DLE&M. And once again, we're going to mention Dr. Joan LaChance along with Dr. Michael Guerrero, who are the co-authors of this particular release on education teacher preparation standards. That copyright was obtained in May, and it was sort of officially released at La Cosecha. North Carolina, as I said, was well represented at La Cosecha. In the opening address, we had Jose Viena. There were 3 presentations specifically tied to NCDPI. One of them, with Dr. Joan LaChance, was the DLI modules, which are a set of modules that can be offered face-to-face or in a virtual manner that are part of what the EL support team offers through NCDPI. Amy Jablonski, as you saw in the earlier picture, was also in attendance, and she and I were able to present about the various types of programs that North Carolina supports with DLI. For me, that's just how I know business is done. But as I've been around the country and spoken to other states, not everyone supports.
She could also sit on our meeting with Jenny.
Of programs. Very often there's limitations to what's supported, and we're very unique in North Carolina in the way that we work together as a team at the state and in a way that we support so many different kinds of DLI additive programs. And within that, we did talk about, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, MTSS and how MTSS and DLI can work together. The questions are the same as with any MTSS process, but sometimes the answers are going to be a little bit different. And so we were excited to get to explore that. The final presentation that North Carolina was involved in, that DPI was involved in, was working with state policies and practices. And so Texas, North Carolina, and New Mexico shared together and compared and contrasted the different programs, the different policies, and the different practices. The EL support team, again, was one of the things we were able to talk about. So often in a state like Texas, the focus is on the policies. And in North Carolina, we're able to really push past those policies and do much, much more in our practices. And finally, there were many other presentations from North Carolina. I went through the whole program book. I'm afraid I may have left the district out, so if I did, please let me know and we'll get you added to the slide. But you can see here how many different districts and universities were represented in the presentations at La Cosecha. All right, shifting gears now and getting to the real meat of the webinar today, starting new DLI programs. And we will begin by turning it over to Dr. Timothy Sims. He is the Director of Federal Programs at Hickory Public Schools and part of that EL support team that we have mentioned. And we're very excited to hear from you today, Tim.
Good afternoon. So I'm excited to talk to people, but I don't want to come across as I am not an expert presenter on the language immersion implementation. But I think that since we're relatively new into the process, I think they asked me to speak so that I could share some of our learning from the process. We are unique in our region because many of the programs that have started in our region have been through vendor programs. And we have made the decision that that was not something we could afford to implement. So we are implementing our own program. And then I think we can go to the next slide. So we are in our second year of implementation. So we have kindergarten and first, but this dual language immersion program was part of a larger reorganization. We had a low performing school that was K-5, and then we had two relatively small elementary schools. Both were pre-K-5, and we made the decision to try to focus them at their curriculum levels. So we reorganized from a pre-K2 school and a 3-5 school. And actually, we've had very good results from that. The challenge around this is that the decision to go to the pre-K2 and 3-5 model was made in February, and that was also the point where they made the decision we would implement dual language immersion the following year. So we had from February to August to get it started, which is not a implementation plan I would recommend. I would highly recommend taking a full year to implement dual language immersion. Additionally, we've had such a good result and such a good response from our initial start that we are starting a second school next year, but that decision was made at the end of last year. So we've had the full year to bring that staff on board. And okay, so one of the things that I wanted to think of big buckets that we really needed to tend to, and if I didn't tend to it well enough, it really helped me remember. So there might be things that we did well that I forgot and are not on this list, but I wouldn't say it's all inclusive. But I think it's really important that you develop a common understanding of dual language. And I don't go into detail about all of these, but this one I'll go into a little bit more later. I think you need to decide what your non-negotiables are. So I think really talking about what are the kids going to get, what has to happen at the school, and really creating that list of what will be delivered that we can't step back from. I do think there's room to leave, like we have to have a language allocation plan, right? But there may be room to renegotiate that later, but I think you have to start with a plan. Provide professional development. And our learning here was that we really needed to provide professional development for everyone at the school, not just the DLI teachers, but for everyone at the school. We needed professional development for our administrators. We needed professional development for our central office staff, because it's now a whole district program, and that all different levels of people have to speak to that program when we're out in the community. A big area was to identify stakeholders, and I just kind of mentioned our stakeholders ran from our board members through our central office staff to our school level administrators, our teachers, our parents, our students. It was really an interesting picture to me in that I don't know how well we marketed the program to the kids who were in it. When we went in, I think about a quarter way through the school year, and I was talking to a student, and I was asking him about, his Spanish, and, he was speaking Spanish to a child next to him in the class, and when I asked him about his Spanish, he said, "Oh, I'm not much of a Spanish speaker." Like, I don't think it had relayed to them what they were learning, and that was kind of a funny moment for me, but it made us really step back and think, we really need to talk to them about more explicitly about what they are doing through the program. Of course, the creation of marketing and application materials, because that's huge to get the word out, but that goes into pamphlets and, we did pamphlets and videos and, webinars so that we could have multiple ways. We did morning meetings, evening meetings, just so that we could help meet people's schedules. And then we had to develop a plan for the recruitment and retention of teachers, because if you are not, we are hoping not to have to always hire people from outside the country through either like EPI or Participate. We're trying to grow our own staff so that we have a stable program in which we can continue to build off excellence. And so, and to do that, we have to go and find teachers where they are. And so that's a piece that has to be looked at. And then the whole gamut of choosing all of the instructional materials, because there's a lot to choose from. And it's really important for us, since we were doing a whole school turnaround and we were looking at larger instructional initiatives and larger instructional changes in literacy instruction in English, that we didn't want to set a program that would be antagonistic or philosophically with what our literacy process was in English, recognizing that there may be differences, but I think I mentioned that in a bit later. We can go on to the next. So some resources for building a common understanding. And so I'm very fortunate that Ivana really encouraged me to enroll in the certificate in DLI administration at HCU. And Dr. Emily Bivens did the first course, which I just completed. And I so wish I had done this before we started the program, because I would have been so much more organized. But what I really appreciated it was a lot of the things I did on my own. She kind of walks you through the process of the things you need to do and the research behind it. And so that allowed me to go back and redo things, or recreate, or really just trash what I did and start over again. So that's a great opportunity that is available in our state, and it's completely online. So I would highly encourage that. And the text we used was dual language instruction from A to Z, and that was an excellent text. I would highly recommend it if you're starting a program. It will tell you what you need to do. There's a whole chapter like what you need to do the year before you start the program. And so I think that would be highly helpful to somebody who's looking at doing this. Another program that I found very interesting was from the Center for Applied Linguistics. Before we started our program, I was able to go to professional development in Charlotte on guiding principles for dual language education, and that was presented by Jose Medina. And they have since republished that work, but they also, the Center for Applied Linguistics offers that as an online course. And so that is something that we're putting our program is having our teachers take that online course as part of their professional learning. So I think those are some online opportunities. And then the third one that we have not done a great job of implementing, but it's a part that we're really working on, and I would highly recommend, is the Teaching for Biliteracy. If it provides a framework for leveraging your curriculum from both languages, so that you're really looking at what's one language, what's the other language, and then how do we bridge that for students, because of course we don't have more time in these programs. And so it provides a process, and online there is a book study that goes along with it. And so that is something we're trying to work through with our teachers, is to really talk about what is the collaborative curriculum piece. In our structure right now, and I'm not sure that this will always maintain, but our students are going between one teacher for English and the other teacher for Spanish. So, so for that, it's really important to have a process for those teachers to really collaborate on the curriculum. So that is one of the things I would highly recommend. Our new school that is going into dual language next year, the entire staff is doing the dual language instruction from A to Z book study. And I think that's a really important piece that we didn't get to do previously, but it's really going to help every one of those staff members be able to talk to what's the research on this, why is it important. So that's something I would highly recommend. And then my final slide, I think. So what we learned, and this is always true, leadership at the school is key. I've had a phenomenal principal who's been on board and has really made sure to leverage the program in every aspect she can. I think on the first slide, you saw a picture of kindergarten students, and it was completely her idea, but she had the students from her DLI program on the day that students were coming in to register for kindergarten in the spring. Her DLI students were doing the tours of the school. So it gave us a really great opportunity to highlight that program. Hiring the right people is crucial. I have phenomenal teachers working in this program. What has come to both the principal and I in doing observations is they are some of the best teachers we have in this district. Those kids are working for every minute, and it's phenomenal to watch them go. It's really important that your teachers understand language acquisition, right? And that may not always be the case. They may not have formal training in language acquisition, so it's important that we provide that if necessary. That there are differences in literacy instruction from one language to the other, and so we really need to focus on what may be different and why, because administrators, instructional support people need to hear that, so that when there's something going on in the maybe Spanish literacy class that looks different from what we would do in English literacy, there might be a real good justification for that, and that we needed to have conversations around that. So that is, I would also say visit as many programs as you can, because as Ivana said earlier, there are so many different models in the state, and you can benefit from all of them. And then the other thing is, know that it is okay to make changes. We started our program, we're 2 years into it. We're seeing great success, but we've learned some things, and we may do some things differently. And I'm also giving our second school, as they move in, they're making, I keep telling the principal, well, you have choices about how you want to do this. Here are some of your options. And I think that relieves them, that it doesn't have to look like another school, but it could still be quality. And with that, I am going to, I'll stop there.
Tim, thank you so much for sharing all that. I see a few questions coming into the question box that I think are kind of general, that we might want to ask at the end, so that all of our presenters will have a chance to weigh in. So I'll give it one more second for any other questions that might be specific. Tim, we appreciate the fact that you're willing to share, knowing that you're relatively new at this, and as you're absolutely right, that's part of why we want to hear from you, how it is getting involved and really getting things started. So also talking about getting things started, we're going to switch on over here to Carla and let her talk to us a little bit about the programs that they have at Allen J. Elementary. Carla? I can see that you are unmuted, Carla, but I cannot hear you. If you have a headset, maybe unplug and replug. or as Anne Marie mentioned earlier, change to phone and come back to computer. We'll give it another minute. So Carla, if you're able to type something in the chat box. I know we had typed earlier. I know you were unmuted earlier. Okay, so she's going to switch over to the telephone. I'll give her one more second. And in order to take pressure off, if it doesn't work and we need to work on it a little bit longer, we can skip on ahead to Mara. But we'll give Carla a second to switch over to the phone. So as I said, the questions that have come into the question box are kind of general, but I'll go ahead and pose the first one for thought, not necessarily for answer but at this point. But the question is, what happens to the teachers at the school if they're not qualified to teach dual language? And so that's always part of the consideration, is looking at your staffing. So just keep that in your thoughts. That might even make some of you think of some additional questions. I heard a click. Carla, is that you? I still see Carla's microphone. Tim, do you want to give a quick response to that question while we're waiting for Carla to come through?
I'll answer it from my perspective, and then I did my education in my undergrad in upstate New York. So in New York, there was actually bilingual certification, and it was different from other certifications. In North Carolina, our teachers are not necessarily, we don't offer dual language certification, that, to my knowledge.
Yet.
Yet. I was going to say that. However, so what we have focused on is hiring elementary ed teachers who have, like, our teachers have been trained either in the US or in their native country, and they are elementary ed because they are teaching the elementary ed curriculum. So our teachers are all licensed in elementary education, which is why I was kind of mentioning we might have to think about the dual language second language acquisition piece, because that may not necessarily been part of their training.
Thanks, Tim.
And that is an important point that Tim is making. This is Anne-Marie. Teachers, of course, in North Carolina and other states must be certified in the content they teach. So in a dual language immersion program at the elementary level, you must have certified elementary teachers. And then those who are teaching in the language other than English must be able to deliver those standards in that language. Tim, do you want to comment a little further too about, when you start a dual language immersion program, what about the teachers who are already at the school who may be certified teachers, obviously, but don't teach in the language other than English? What happens there?
So in our initial school, we had, because we were making changes to the design of the school, we had several people leave. So it was announced that dual language was coming in and that staff would be adjusted, because so it was kind of a big known that things were going to shift.
Yeah, I think I'm in.
So for us, that in our second school, there is a level of tension there, because they are concerned because they have a full team. But our comment is we have excellent teachers at that school. We're not trying to get rid of anybody. There will be some natural attrition. And then, just because people get married or move or whatever, and we'll try to make placements within the school. But there is a level of tension there. What we are focusing on is, so we're doing 2 classes, and we are kind of doing the 2 worlds model where they're trading between 2 teachers. So one is an English-speaking teacher and one is the Spanish-speaking teacher. For now, some of that may change at the new school. They're still deciding. So for us, it's worked out really well because we've had really dynamic teachers who have been part of that pair. And so, but it's important that both of them have training in second language acquisition and the whole idea of bridging languages. So is that kind of what you were getting at, Dr. Gunter?
Yes. Yes, I think that is what the person was asking, because there is always some tension there. But as you noted, through natural attrition, and through the need, obviously, to have teachers who can teach in both languages involved in the program, there's a lot of give and take and new teams forming as the program grows and matures.
Thank you both. I believe Carla is online now. Or back.
I believe so. Can you all hear me?
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. So as I was saying, I'm Carla Flores Ballesteros, and I'm the proud principal at Allen J. Just to give you a little bit of background about my career, I taught at Jones Elementary, which was one of the first immersion schools in North Carolina, for 10 years before I became an administrator. So I had some experience with immersion and dual language. I myself am a native of Mexico, so I'm a dual language product in my country before I moved here to the States. So at Allen J, we are very proud to have the very first English Urdu program, dual language program, and an English Spanish program. And the way it all started, it was actually December of last year. The district had been talking about opening dual language programs at 2 different schools, Allen J being one of them and Hunter Elementary being the other. Hunter houses a dual language Spanish program. When the district approached me, I thought it was a wonderful idea, but I had a concern about equity because about a third of my population is Urdu speaking. The majority of my students are from Pakistan, and I have about 30% of Spanish-speaking students from different countries around the world. So I brought that to the attention of the district, and they agreed with me. So we started looking about the opportunity to open an Urdu program as well. We were very fortunate that one of my teachers, who was already in kindergarten, was an Urdu native speaker. So that helped with the transition. So we started, like I said, in December of last year, and the conversation started with the chief academic officer, the ELL director, our school support resource officers, and our ELL department. And we started to look at the different models. We did a few things. We made sure that we looked at different models. If you can go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to focus on different things. So first, we needed to assess what the needs were. The purpose of opening a dual language program was to better serve our ELL learners. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we provided opportunities for our English language students. So we looked at the different needs and what we wanted to do to make sure that our students were not only becoming bilingual, but as you all know, biliterate. So we looked at different models. We looked at different articles, books. I just put some of the books and literature that we reviewed. I highly recommend all of these materials. I have other resources that we use, which were articles, and I have a database with those. I can give them to you if anybody's interested. But we really wanted to make sure that we looked at what was out there before we made a decision of what we wanted to do at Allen J and Hunter. We collaborated with Hunter as well as we developed this program, except for the Urdu part. So we looked at all the pros and cons of the different models. We looked at the, reading the different materials. Like I said, there's the transitional for minority students, but we know that's not the best. We looked at the maintenance, which is really for language minority students, and then the enrichment, which is what we chose, which is the bilingualism and biliteracy for both the minority language students and the language majority students. So that's what we looked at. The other thing that we did is we conducted several school visits in North Carolina, and we also went to New York and New Jersey to look at different programs over there to make sure that we had a better understanding of the models and the programs different schools presented and different schools had. So after we did all that, we came back. Every time that we went on a school visit, we would come back and talk about what we like, what we didn't like, what we learned, and so on and so forth. And at the end of all our visits, which we concluded in March of this year, that's when we started really planning. So we decided that we were going to, what the program, the model we were going to choose. So we went with the 50-50 model. And the 50-50 with the students that were going to go into the program, so 50 native speakers of another language and 50 English speakers, and also 50-50 at the time of instruction with each one of the languages. We looked at different models and we decided to do the 50-50 model with an A-B day. And we wanted to make sure also that when we developed the job descriptions, that we had highly qualified staff members, including a curriculum facilitator. So we are very fortunate that we have a dual language curriculum facilitator in each one of our buildings. My dual language curriculum facilitator is a bilingual teacher in English and Spanish, but she is learning Urdu, and we are really working with the community and bringing on the stakeholders. So I agree with all of the things that Dr. Sims said. It is very important that we bring people who are invested in this, who are open to understanding language acquisition, and that there are some non-negotiables in this model. So one of the things that we had to focus on was scheduling. We wanted to make sure that we put systems in place to support the teachers, but also to support both languages within the instructional time. So we were very intentional about creating our schedules during the day for guided reading, for Eureka Math, which is a mandate in Guilford County, as well as CKLA in the lower grades. So the other thing that we are continuously working on is developing our curriculum. There are many things out there, but we need to make sure that we are still following the Guilford County initiatives and the mandates. So what we're doing, we went for Spanish, we bought Santillana books, and we are aligning the themes with the books that we acquired with the CKLA themes and units. So the curriculum facilitators at both schools are working together to develop the units and the themes. What we're doing with the Urdu, during the summer, the teacher who speaks Urdu worked throughout the summer, and she also worked with a Urdu translator, so they could translate the material so the students were given authentic information. We are very fortunate that our Pakistani community is very large around our school. So we had a parent actually going to Pakistan during the summer. She brought materials for us when she came back, because we want to make sure that our students are exposed, like I said, to authentic materials. And we want to make sure that we provide appropriate and equitable resources that are allocated across the school. And if you can go to the next slide for me, please. So this is how our model looks like, what the students are doing, our language goals, our cultural goals, our academic goals, time distribution, and entry level. So we put different materials together. We put flyers, we did PowerPoints, we made sure that we communicated with all our stakeholders, and including district officials, parents, the community around their school, interested parents. Now, I want to say that this program is only for our school. This is not a magnet program. It is only offered for our community and to serve the Allen J students. I'm just going to give you a minute to look through these. So with this, these are basically our non-negotiables. So our teachers need to make sure that all this is followed, and we make sure that everybody understands and we follow. And of course, as any materials, everything's fluid and it's a live document. So, we're learning through the implementation. This is our very first year. We're only working with kindergarten. Our goal is to open grade level every year. So we already have the teachers, thank goodness, for next year for both English, Spanish, and Urdu English programs. So we want to make sure that the teachers have the time to create the materials and to align with the standards, because we are still have to test our students. They still have to complete all the assessments and make sure that they do DBOs and TRCs and so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that they are prepared in both languages. So the goal is that we start our students in the program in kindergarten and no later than the end of first semester of first grade. Because of course we know we have students that come and go. We're a little bit of transient school. So we would also have to look at case by case as the students enroll into our program. So if you can go to the next slide. So this is just an example of the materials that we provided to parents. Anything and everything that we send home, not only for the kindergarten dual language program, but for our community at large. We make sure that we send every communication in the 3 languages because we know that's the community we are serving. And we want to make sure that the parents feel welcome and that the parents feel that they are equipped to help their students, and that they know that they can come to the school and ask questions, and that we're going to be there for them, and we're going to be able to provide resources in their language. Because if they work with their students in their language, we know that those skills are also going to transfer into the English language. So this is just what we presented to the parents, along with meetings that we had on PowerPoint for the parents and the community about the dual language programs. So we talked about the benefits, the cognitive benefits, the academic benefits, the life-changing benefits, and we are continuing to have these conversations with the parents as we have parent nights and so on and so forth. So for the next slide, what are we learning? So we have 2 very unique programs, the English Spanish and the Urdu English program. So we have to look at those programs separately, but also together, because this is a continuation for every year up until 5th grade. We're also having conversations already with the middle school because we want to make sure that we build capacity for the students and our teachers to continue providing the support for our students. So at least what we're looking for is that at least one class when these students go into the middle school is offered in the target language, being Spanish or Urdu, because we want to make sure that we know that the skills are built upon and they're not retaught. So what we do with these both programs, the English Spanish program, we have 2 teachers. We have 32 students. We have 16 students in each one of the classes. So they have an A-B day. They go A day with the English teacher, B day to the Spanish teacher, and vice versa. The Urdu program is a standalone, meaning the teacher does the instruction in both languages, but it still switches from one language to the other. She has different things that are in the classroom, and what she does is she just uses flip charts. So she flips from one language to the other. And then the other students go to one classroom and a different classroom. The classroom for the dual Urdu has 16 students. So we want to make sure that we provide the resources and the support for the students so they continue in this program and their sustainability. These 2-way programs offer an inclusive way to meet the educational needs of our ELLs and the English native speakers, and we want to incorporate child development and learning individual child characteristics and the social and cultural context as well. So we want to expose our students to those different cultures. And the framework is that it fulfills the goals for full bilingualism and biliteracy, not only with the great academic achievement, but also the global awareness. And it's key that we have that collaboration for distance. So we are analyzing all the data. We are communicating with our parents. We send surveys. We send questions. We talk to them. We conduct classroom visits and observation to gather as much data as we can We also have a partnership with UNCG through their enacted program, and we are going to continue with working with them to provide professional development, not only for our DLI teachers, but also for the whole staff, because it is important that we are in this together. We are a community, even though we have two different programs, we want to make sure that we continue to be an Allen J community. So that's, in a nutshell, what we're doing at Allen J.
That's a big nutshell. Wow, some exciting things going on there. Thank you so much for sharing. I realize that our time is short and we have one more exciting presenter to go. So I will tell you, if you need to leave at exactly 5 o'clock, we will not have our feelings hurt. As Anne-Marie shared earlier, this is being archived, recorded, and will be archived and posted on the DLI website. So please do not feel bad if you need to leave. But I will ask if the presenters are able to stick around a few minutes. We might hopefully have some time for Q&A at the end as well. So again, thank you so much, Carla. Exciting things going on there in Guilford County and at Allen J. Mara, we're going to turn it over to you now to talk about what's happening in Charlotte Meck.
Good afternoon. I will try to go back to my Chicago roots and go as quickly as I can. So good afternoon. I work with all of our world language programs, immersion and non-immersion, K through 12. So if we just go ahead and jump to the next slide, Ivana. So we have multiple programs here in CharlotteMecklenburg Schools. I think the German program, and Herr Nuss is on this webinar, goes back over 20 years at this point. Our Spanish two-way immersion program is about 20 years old as well. So let me just explain what we do have. In 4 of our languages, Chinese, French, German, and Japanese, we have full immersion K5, and then 6-8 immersion continuation language courses. For our Spanish dual language programs, we have two-way programs. We have 2 schools that are fully articulated K through 8, and then we have 3 programs that are at K1, including our newest building that opened this fall, Charlotte East. And with those programs, we do 90% Spanish and 10% English in kindergarten, and then all the subsequent grades are 50-50. Certain subjects are always in Spanish, certain subjects are always in English, and we ensure that there are content and language courses all the way through 8th grade in those programs. So that's something that we had to make sure we needed to include, not just the language, but also the content to show that it's true immersion. Collinswood is an ESA school recognized by the Spanish government, and one of the requirements is the amount of contact time in the target language. So if we move on to the next slide, we've also had a 9-12 continuation for language study at advanced levels for a long time. Even before the immersion programs had fully articulated, back in the mid to late 90s, West Mecklenburg High School was our original World Language Magnet High School, with the intent of our language immersion students articulating to there at some point. Also, just by just sheer happenstance, many of our immersion students already articulated to South Mecklenburg High School. So when they decided that we needed a second location to serve those students, South Mecklenburg became our other language magnet high school. And we'd already had immersion students coming there for the better part of a decade before it was official. So based on the information and our experiences with our immersion students coming into the high school, we knew what we were going to do with the students when they got to 9th grade. Because as you can imagine, those of you who've had experience with immersion students, it sort of becomes like heritage language students. Their accent is beautiful. Their vocabulary is vast. Their listening comprehension skills are off the charts. When it comes to language production and writing, there are larger gaps between their skill levels there compared to the other skills of how beautiful their language sounds when it comes out and all of those pieces. So we had to really think about what are we going to do when they get to 9th grade, and we need to then streamline it so that it is consistent, especially since the West Mecklenburg program then moved to North Mech. So we had to make sure that the north half and the south half of the county were getting the same opportunities for their language instruction. So because we have 5 languages feeding into the high school, we cannot offer content courses in the target languages. It's just too cumbersome. So we are able to offer more advanced language courses. If we go ahead to the next slide. This is just to give you an idea for those of you who are just looking at K-1 programs or starting your programs. This is kind of what happens when they come out of immersion at 5th grade. There are a lot of things that are smooth and beautiful, but there are some big holes. And so our goals in grades 6 through 12 immersion continuation is to sort of fill in those holes so that they have lovely Havarti cheese as opposed to Swiss. All right. So here's what we've been doing at South Mecklenburg High School, and then what we also started at North Mech for our French, Chinese, German, and Japanese courses. Because they really stopped their content courses at the end of 5th grade and just have language continuation in grades 6 through 8, we start them in an honors level 3 class, and we also pair it with an honors civilization and culture class. That just happens to be a course that had been approved. It is really just a level 3 class that we've tweaked locally with thematic units to help fill in those gaps of Swiss cheese. It also then ensures that our students are taking their immersion continuation language every single day instead of having gaps by only taking it one semester and then maybe not having it again until 2nd semester the following year. So in 10th grade, we will pair usually the honors level 4 or the lowest level of the DP International Baccalaureate course with the Honors Civilization and Culture 2, which is really just Honors 4 tweaked locally to continue filling in some of those Swiss cheese holes, if you will. In the 11th grade, our Magnet Compact only requires 1 course, so usually that will be their AP Language and Culture, or it might be another diploma level class for the International Baccalaureate students at North Mech. And then in 12th grade, unfortunately, there are no AP literature courses for Chinese, French, German, or Japanese. So we either offer honors 6 and 7 or the diploma level high level class so that they take the higher level IB exam. They might also pair it with something like AP Human Geography or an appropriate AP Social Studies course so that they are meeting our magnet requirements. So as we move on to the next slide, back one. This is what it looks like for Spanish because it's a little bit different. In grades 6 through 8, they do have those content courses, math and social studies in Spanish, in addition to literacy. And when we knew that we were going to keep our students K through 8, we talked about what courses would be most appropriate. And Spanish for native speakers, which at the state level is called Heritage Immersion 1, we decided that we wanted to continue with that as their literacy in the 6th grade. So we've split the Spanish for native speakers, Part A in 6th grade, Part B in 7th grade, along with their math and social studies in Spanish. In the 8th grade, they finish the Spanish for native speakers 2 or Heritage Immersion 2, along with math and social studies in the target language, which sets them up to be in Honors 4 in the 9th grade instead of level 3. We still pair it with that Civilization and Culture 1 in the 9th grade because there's still some holes in the Swiss cheese we need to keep filling in. In 10th grade, they will take the AP Language and Culture course along with the Civilization and Culture 2 elective. And I will tell you there was a lot of pushback from the parents and some of the teachers when we first moved these students to take AP in the 10th grade. but out of the class of 85 students who took that AP language course the first year in the 10th grade, 83 of them had a 4 or a 5 on that AP exam. So that has kind of quashed any concerns that the parents and teachers originally had. So moving on, in 11th grade, we are fortunate enough to have access to the AP Spanish Literature exam and course from the College Board, so that is their 11th grade course, unless they are at North Mech and in the IB program, in which case they're working towards that higher level diploma exam. And then in 12th grade, we have offered Honors Level 7, which has varied based on the number of students in the class. Usually literature and film is the focus of the course. It has sometimes taken on a journalism bent, but it depends on, again, the teacher and the students. We have not actually developed units for Honors Level 8. We've usually paired it with an AP course, or these students have picked up a third language to satisfy those magnet requirements of 2 courses per year. So I will tell you that we have done a lot of work on making sure that the civilization and culture courses are articulated and paired well. I think that might be on the next slide. Let's see. So just to talk about what has worked, obviously with Immersion, taking them all the way through K-12, 13 years in the program, the students are developing those global mindsets. They have broader perspectives because they've been involved with speakers of the language and authentic resources from those cultures. So that has helped to expand their horizons. We are making sure that those advanced language pathways for AP, IB, and beyond are there. We do have a partnership with UNC Charlotte, which has been in place over a decade for students who've topped out of the language classes and have the time in their schedule to go to campus. They can participate in our High Flyers program. And what that is they would start in a 3,000 or possibly 4,000 level course at UNC Charlotte in their target language. They pay for the course initially, and after successful completion of the course, they are reimbursed by our Advanced Studies office. We only have a handful of students that do that every year. Almost all of them are former Immersion students, which is fantastic. When they are taking those courses, they are dual credit, and they get a full quality point on their high school transcript, the same as an AP or an IB diploma level course. We have been using the STAMP test from Avant Assessment for our gateway years at 5th grade and 8th grade to see how we are meeting the proficiency targets set by the state. And that also helps us with placement in the 9th grade if necessary, in case somebody's not quite ready for that level 3 or level 4 course, or they actually don't need to start at level 3 coming out of Chinese immersion. They're really ready for level 4. Those STAMP test results help us as another data point to make that decision. And again, with our Civilization and Culture 1 and 2 courses, we've pulled the teachers from all 5 of our languages together to come up with cohesive units and appropriate proficiency targets and performance tasks in the target language, and curated some resources so that they are getting the same equitable access at both South Mecklenburg and North Mecklenburg as they continue through high school. So some of our challenges and areas we need to grow. We really need to have the opportunity to keep coming together K through 12 to ensure that we have daily, unit, and annual language performance and proficiency targets in all languages for all of the skills and for our intercultural communication skills. And so I know that's an area we had started to explore, and then to be perfectly honest, we've been in a constant snow globe shaking state for about 1.5 years, and so budget allocations have not come our way for those to create opportunities for our teachers to come together during the school year, and the majority of our teachers do travel during the summer. So we're hoping as things settle down through this year that we'll have more opportunities in the near future. We are working to ensure that all of the stakeholders understand the appropriate expectations. I heard one of our other panelists mention that the students weren't even aware that they were learning Spanish in the Spanish immersion program. Our students are aware that they're learning the language, but they may not have appropriate expectations for what they can do in the language. And the parents may or may not have appropriate expectations. So we want to make sure that we are consistently sharing communication and also listening to our stakeholders to improve our programs. And one of our biggest challenges, because of the 5 different languages and the multiple schools that we have where we have programs, we are challenged to develop enough capacity and sustainable leadership in all phases, K-5, 6-8, and 9-12. So those are the areas we're working on. I think we can go to the next slide, and that I'm done.
Thank you so much, Maura, and thank you all of you. I see people are sticking around. We didn't want to miss any of this fantastic information. I will say that Bernd chimed in and said it's 25 years for German in Charlotte Mech, so congratulations, that's exciting. Quickly, I will say too that I noticed that each of the presenters shared about connections with universities, ECU, UNCG, and UNC Charlotte, and that's very exciting. Let's go ahead and do the poll and let some people add questions. If you're willing to stick around for a few more minutes, we will stick around for a few more. If you need to go, we understand. Amory, if you want to skip the poll, we can.
I think we can go ahead, and as you said, if folks can stick around for this as well as our wrap-up, that's great. If not, we're still recording, and we can always check back and get information later as needed. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll, which is, what new DLI programs do you have or are you anticipating in the next few school years? So you see the various levels, and perhaps you don't have any definitive plans at this time. So let's go ahead and do that poll. It is, again, check all that apply. But we'll go ahead and take a look in the question box for any questions. We have been answering some individual questions as we've been moving along. Go ahead and click into your vote. Let us know what new DLI programs you have or are anticipating in the next few school years. Maybe that's just a wish of yours, or maybe it's an actual plan you're already putting into place and rolling out. Or perhaps you've got something happening in the middle school or high school or other. Or as we said, maybe you don't have any definitive plan at the moment, but you're just thinking about it. I am also looking in the questions box, and as Ivana noted, mostly we've been getting questions addressed as they've come up, so that's good.
And I will just say that one of the questions was about PD being offered, and Tim's response that was shared with that person included the Teach for Biliteracy, which is based on that same book that he showed earlier. Chatham County recently hosted a session on the Teaching for Biliteracy, and there is a possibility that they may host one again next September. So if that's something you're interested in, keep your ears open for that. And all right, we have our answers.
Yes. We do advertise, by the way, PD opportunities like that on our DLI Educators listserv, so always look for them there. All right, here's our results. Looks we've got a great number of you, 75%, who are looking at starting new elementary programs in the next few years, and some others as well who are here to get the information but no definitive plans at this time to add DLI programs. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions, Anne-Marie, that you think we need to address as a group, or are we pretty much covered?
I think we're good. We had some general questions about, what happens with teachers and so forth, and we've answered those about how all teachers are needed and necessary in a DLI program, and so there are ways that schools who are starting DLI programs balance that out.
Great, thank you. So we will go quickly with the updates, but we know you want to know what else is happening around the world. So we are excited today to unveil the newest version of the DL Advisory Board. We have a couple of members that have moved from being active on a daily basis members into being advisory members, both Charles Akins and Nicolette Grant. Some changes in their positions and what they're doing, and so they've stepped back a little bit, but will continue at an advisory role. We have a number of continuing advisory board members. I'll give you a second to look at those names. Some of those universities that were mentioned, as well as some retirees. We have different districts across the state. And these are people who have been serving with us on the advisory board, and we are very thankful that they have chosen to continue. When we're looking at the advisory board, we're looking for a number of things. We want to make sure that we have representation from all 8 of our state board districts. We want to make sure that we have elementary, middle, and high, and as you can see here, also universities represented, because we want to hear the voices from different perspectives. We also are looking to make sure that there's a balance between our different kinds of programs. As we've mentioned several times in this broadcast, North Carolina has a number of different kinds of programs, two-way, one-way, different languages, and we want to make sure that all of those are represented. So our newest members, and you can see the list here, come from all over the state as well. You can see a number of programs represented, including some of our less taught languages, such as Greek and also Cherokee, listed on here. I see some of our speakers from today listed as well on these 2 slides. So we just want to say thank you to the many people who applied to be on the advisory board. The messages just did go out yesterday with the congratulations as well as with the thank you for applying. And I just want to say that everyone who applied, we had just fantastic qualifications. We had so many qualified people, there was no way that we could take them all. And so we just thank each and every person. And those who did apply but were not added to the board this year, please know there are many ways that you can be involved to continue being aware of what's happening with DLI and also helping us along the way. Emery?
Also, we talked about ACTFL before. ACTFL is our national organization, and the call for proposals for next year's ACTFL convention, which will be in Washington, D.C. in November, are out. Anyone can submit a proposal. The deadline is Friday, January 11th. Those are all submitted online. There's a variety of presentation types you can propose, 45-minute sessions and roundtables, as well as practice or research-oriented papers and electronic posters. So something to think about as you consider sharing what you do in your DLI programs and in world language programs in general that you might want to present at a conference.
Wow, you haven't even recovered from getting back from that one.
Yeah, they do put the call out very early while we're still at the previous year's conference. Also coming up, most of you are aware, we are going to be hosting the 7th International Conference on Immersion and Dual Language Education here in North Carolina in February in Charlotte. The seats are filling fast, as it says here, and you can go to the website and get details. Keep in mind that this is what we usually call the CARLA Conference, and this is being held regionally every 4 years. The conferences at the University of Minnesota are still held too, but that allows us to have these conferences more often and to interact with colleagues literally from around the globe as we talk about dual language immersion and how it's implemented, as well as the research that informs it from across the country and many other countries around the world. Also, there'll be some school site visits associated with this conference, so some of our North Carolina programs are going to be featured in that way.
NABE is also coming up. That is March 7th through 9th. And on the pre-conference day, in addition to the pre-conference offerings, we also have the National Council of State Title III Directors meeting. And that is at Disney Coronado Springs. So don't tell anybody where you're going. But NABE is also an opportunity to hear about different kinds of dual language immersion programs. And there are usually a number of presenters from North Carolina represented there as well. Oops. Good.
All right. Also coming up, and again, we're taking these in chronological order, is the SCOLT Conference, Southern Conference on Language Teaching. It will be in Myrtle Beach in March, the end of March. This is our regional conference, and there will be a dual language immersion strand throughout the conference. This conference, by the way, as you see when you start clicking on this slide, is co-hosted by FLANC, the Foreign Language Association of North Carolina. That's our state organization, because they usually have local hosts. And so we are joining our South Carolina sister organization, Scaffolta, and FLANC to host this in Myrtle Beach. The registration is open, as it says on the slide. There's a lot of things available, and there are various registration rates depending on when you register, as well as your status as an undergraduate student, and if you want Saturday-only attendance to go to Myrtle Beach in March and be a part of that professional development. All right, I think we'll skip this last poll question. We've had a lot of good discussion today, and we'll move on to closeout. This is part of our DLI quarterly update webinar. So you see that we've got 2 of these done for this school year. We have 2 more coming up in February and in April. All the materials from this broadcast, just as we promised, will be posted on the DLI events page of the wiki. A recording of this webinar and the other webinars that you see here is also posted on our NCDPI YouTube channel on the World Languages playlist. That's it. This is a list of our DLI team that you saw pictures of at the beginning of this broadcast. If you want to contact any of them, you're welcome to do so. They have all of their email addresses and titles there. So if you have a particular question about something related to a content area or in DLI in general, you're welcome to contact any of them. Ivana and I share the leadership of this team. We are the DLI team co-leads, and so if you send us a question that needs input from one of our colleagues here on the team, we're also happy to pass that along. All right, and that's the shot again of all of our team members, and that concludes our webinar for today. I'm going to look to see if there are any more questions in the question box before we sign off. But I think we are good. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you especially to our guest speakers. Have a great day.